there. Welcome to this week's edition of Hot Property, our interactive real estate show. Vince Gaetano from monstermortgage.ca and Scott Galbraith from Genworth Financial Canada will be joining us. We will talk right now about new and resale homes and condos with Daniel Ellenberg from sellwithdan.com and Royal LePage. And we have a lawyer with us, Richard Hoffman, who represents Tridel. Good to see you both. Thanks for joining us.
Nice to see you.
I want to put some phone numbers up very quickly so you don't have to be on high alert just yet. Ready for that? If you want to get to us, here are the phone numbers within the GTA. 416-872-CP24. That's 2724. Toll free 1-888-863. CP24. You can fax us at 416-593-6397 or email us hotproperty@cp24.com. Now it's down to business. Yep. All right, we've been running on our headline box today. A gentleman by the name of Doug Porter. He happens to be BMO Nesbitt Burns Deputy Chief Economist. He is saying, and I want to try to quote him, he is saying that Canadian home resales declined substantially in the first quarter of this year, while listings reached their highest level on record. He feels that the end is near, that indeed we are seeing the end of the boom, and that's really how he's putting it. What do you say to that?
You know, we all look at the same numbers that come out, and we have a fantastic record keeping in Toronto and right across the country. In my opinion, from what I can see, not only in terms of how busy I am, but the market as a whole, especially when you consider not January, February, March, but leading now into the spring market in April, numbers that came out for the first 2 weeks of April indicate that the Toronto market in terms of sales is down about 5% from the record level that we had last year.
But you see, that's what a boom is. So I think what he's saying is that the six-year housing market boom is officially over. So now we're going back down to more normal levels, and some even interpret this as a more balanced market.
But you also got to look at the fact that he also said in the article that areas like Thornhill and Vaughan, the market has increased. Just drive through the city and you'll see all the condos for sale. A lot of the condos have already been sold. You've always got to take these articles with a grain of salt. Because,
yes.
And you also got to look at the people that are involved, like Dan, who are in the trenches. And they can get a good feel for the market as well.
The Canadian Real Estate Association said in a report yesterday that the steep decline in activity in Toronto, which they say represents about 1/4 of sales, was the major reason for the dismal national figure, which we're seeing down right across the nation as well. So I didn't realize that Toronto was so important when it came to the overall landscape of housing.
Well, I guess we are. You know, anyone who's currently out looking for a home or a condo would be very encouraged to read this article, but when they experience the reality of any hot area in the city, homes and condos selling very quickly, in many cases we're back to the multiple offer situation, is going to wonder where exactly this article is coming from.
So if we're seeing less activity, are we still seeing increase in prices in homes and condos?
Well, I guess what we're seeing increase in prices in homes and condos and activity, which, you know, by the end of this month may or may not be down from last April. We're down 5% for the first 2 weeks. The last 2 weeks, if we're up 5%, we're going to be equal to last year's record numbers.
The prices may not increase a lot, but you're still going to see a lot of activity. People are still buying and selling at incredible rates.
So here's what I think happens, and what do I know? I'm just a consumer. I'm just a regular person who tries to understand and navigate through the real estate system. I read something like this, and if I was a buyer and maybe not an experienced buyer, my first thought might be, now is not the time to buy, because I might be coming in at the height of prices at the beginning of a decline. That's kind of the first wave of lack of knowledge that might overwhelm me and might stop me from actually getting into or changing my position in the housing market.
I don't think anybody's purchasing, or nobody should be purchasing based on trying to time the market. We live in a city where real estate has proven to be an incredibly lucrative and wise investment for the past 60, 70 years.
But this has been 6 years, and history tells us that
actually,
things don't
longer.
last.
Yeah, you know, that's the interesting thing, I think.
But I guess the word boom is attached to the 6 years, so.
Right. You know what? We've been in a boom for 12 years in Toronto. We've had consistent price increases since 1995, 1996. So whether or not you classify the boom as 6 years or 12 years, we've been at an extended period of increasing prices. And the reason for that, you have to ask why. And if you go back to the fundamentals as to why the real estate market is performing so well, all of those fundamentals are still in place.
Is this the time to buy?
I think it's always the time to buy, and I don't think you're ever going to find a time where you shouldn't buy, because if you're going to wait, you might wait too long, and then if you're selling, you're never going to get the price you want for your house. So sometimes you just can't look at these articles. You got to think to yourself, if my life is the perfect time to buy, let's do it. Let's buy.
Now, with all due respect, both of you, each of you has a vested interest in this. You make a living through the results of a really good living if it's a successful housing market, and maybe not so much when it's a harder time. So, you know, I just want to make sure that the audience understands that this is information. Everyone has to take what you say and what they read in newspapers from experts and put it all together and see and make sure they're making a well-informed decision.
Right. No question. And, you know, by all means, do all your homework and all your research. The fact of the matter is that this year, when all is said and done, we're going to have somewhere in the range of 80 to 100,000 sales, depending on how close we copied last year's record numbers.
And how close would that be to last year's numbers?
Last year we had about 95,000 homes sold. Okay. About 5-6 years ago, we were averaging about 50 to 60,000 homes sold.
How can you project that? It's only April, it's mid-April. How can you say that?
Well, barring a dramatic and unexpected complete meltdown in this market, that's what we're going to experience. We are in a large city, the largest city in Canada. As we said earlier, we represent 25% of the sales right across the country. Interest rates, which are low and getting lower, which really is encouraging people that weren't thinking of buying this year to get into the market, much the opposite of what this article and maybe other articles are stating. So I guess it's one thing to look at the numbers overall. I can't speak for Canada as a whole because I'm not familiar with the market in Western or Eastern Canada as well as I am with here in Toronto, but Toronto is hot and will continue to be, at least for the foreseeable future.
You got to speak to your lawyer, speak to your real estate agent, because they're involved in it every day. They'll tell you exactly what's going on in the market because they know, they have a feel for it.
I speak to my mother and father sometimes about these things as well, you know, and I really mean this. There's so much history for them. They've owned houses for, you know, some 50 years. Go get sage advice from an experienced homeowner and buyer and seller, you know, and then make sure that it feels right and that you don't feel that you're nervous about a downturn in the market. You know, again, we read the headlines. There's concern about a slowing economy in Ontario and resilience against what's going on in the U.S. It's just something we need to talk about.
You know what? It's fantastic, and I'm very encouraged when we hear this cautionary notes coming out, because as long as people are cautious about this market, we're going to continue to have a market that's going to perform well. It's when everyone tells you that this market is going to go on forever and never stop that you have to worry.
Let's take a break here on Hot Property. When we come back, we'll take your calls.